In this lesson, we're going to learn how to enable and disable the proper colliders for the head and the gaster. Alright, so in the last lesson we had taken a look at how the player might play the game, and we had realized that what we want to do is we want to disable the head collision and the gaster collision if we are not in the intimidation state, or if we're not in the charging or stun state. If we're just detecting the player, we want that to be disabled. Now once it goes into the intimidation state, we want to activate the head collider, and we want that, if it's shot, to put the boss into an immediate charge, and then he'll go through and collide with the level, and then once he's stunned, what we'll do is we'll activate the gaster collider, and then that's where we can start to shoot it, and it will apply damage to the game boss. Alright, so to get started with that, let's go ahead and bring up the boss collision script. So let's go to boss collision, and let's get started. So looking at our variables up here at the top, we've got the boss, boss stunned, and the boss charging. Let's go ahead and put in another private variable. We're going to do the boss intimidation. And we'll say boss intimidation. And let me make sure that I spell that right. Intimidation. There we go. And then in our awake function, we want to say boss intimidation equals boss dot get component, and then angle brackets boss intimidation. Try that one more time. There we go. So now, in our update function, we're going to create a brand new update function here. So we want it to check for these collisions all the time. So we want to check for these states to make sure that we are able to collide or damage these colliders. And so I'm going to say if boss intimidation dot intimidating, if that's true, or, okay, so that's a double line there. I'm not exactly sure what the key is called exactly, but that is the it's shift and then the key that's directly below backspace. Okay, and that will give you those lines. And then we'll say boss charging dot charging is true. Okay, just like that. We're going to execute this code block. So we're going to say head collider dot collider dot enabled. Okay, and we're going to set this to true. Now, we don't have a head collider game object yet. So what we need to do is we need to create that. So up here at the top, I'm going to create a private variable, and that's going to be a game object, and it's going to be called head collider. Now right underneath that, we might as well just go ahead and create our gaster collider. And there we go. So now I need to get that information, need to get those game objects. So I'm going to come down below here and I'm going to say head collider, and you can see that that's showing up, is equal to game object dot find, and then we're going to look for the name of this game object, and it's going to be head underscore collider. And then the next one is going to be gaster collider equals game object dot find, and then in quotations I'm going to put in gaster underscore collider. Now I believe the original name is called rear underscore collider. So I'm going to go ahead and save this really quickly, and I'm going to go into Unity, and it might pop up a warning here saying that it can't find that, it's not being used. Let's go to our game boss, and actually let's go to our search and let's type in colliders, and yes, it says rear collider. Let's go ahead and change its name here. So I'm going to remove rear and say gaster and hit enter, and that should change that. Now let's go back into MonoDevelop and continue working here. So if intimidating and if the boss is charging, if it's in either one of those states, the head collider is going to be enabled, and that's going to be set to true. Okay, and it's we also want to set the Gaster collider. Now here we're going to say else if, and we're going to say if boss stunned dot stunned is true. We want to set the Gaster collider dot enabled equal to true. All right. Now else, if none of those are being fulfilled, we're just going to say set those to false. So head collider dot enabled equals false. And then Gaster collider, same thing. Perfect. So that should be everything that we need for this script here. So now let's go ahead and hit save. Let's test this out in Unity and see if we're on the right track. So let's go ahead and close this. And I'm going to select the Gaster collider and the head collider. And let me go to, let's see, the thorax. I believe it goes up to neck and head. And so we have both of those selected. Okay. And I want to check for the script. Let's make sure the head collider has boss collision. It does. Let's make sure that Gaster collider has boss collision. It does not. So let's make sure that that's there. Okay. So with the head collider and the Gaster collider, we should see the script here. And if I hit play, it should be set to false automatically. Let me go ahead and turn that off and turn off maximize play. Let's hit play again, and you'll see that both of those colliders are now false. Okay, they're not checked, and they're grayed out in the scene view. So if I were to come into my game view and I were to try and shoot the boss head, you'll notice that it's not throwing any sparks. Now it is throwing sparks on the body collider, not the head collider. Now you'll see that the head collider is activated. You can see it's bright green there. And then if we're not intimidating, it goes back to being false. And there we go. Okay, so that's true. And then it charges, and then it turns that off whenever we are out of that stun state. Okay, awesome. So now we have everything set up for that. We have those turned off. They're ready to go, and then I can start shooting that again. Now at this point, what I want to do is that if we shoot that head collider, we want to tell it to start charging. So let's go ahead and do that now. So this functionality is going to be found in the assault rifle. So let's go to the assault rifle, and we're going to scroll down to our hit detection under the raycasting, and you'll see that we're firing, and it's going down and it's calling fire one shot. And so fire one shot is being sent out. We have a ray. It's going out from our camera. And it says if physics raycast is hit, okay, then it's going to say if it hit a rigid body, it's going to add some force to that rigid body. So underneath that, I'm going to say if hit.collider.gameObject.name is equal to head collider then I want it to do this. So I'm going to say boss charging, and let's make sure we have that right. Boss charging, and I don't have that variable. That's why it's not coming up. So let's go ahead and create that up here. So boss detection will do private boss charging equals boss charging. And then under our start function, under the boss detection, we'll say boss charging, lowercase b, equals boss dot get component, and then boss charging. There we go. So now let's go back down to our script where we need to go here, and that was right here. So let's retype that in, so that way IntelliSense recognizes that. We know that it's hooked up and it's working. So boss charging dot charging equals true. All right, so now let's hit save. Let's go into Unity and let's do a quick test. So the default state is that if we were to come in and we did not fire, okay, we're not being detected. Okay, if I were to fire at him, and let's say that I shoot right on the head, okay, he's just detecting me. Now it's not that collider is not enabled until he goes into the intimidation state. So when he roars up, I'm going to shoot him right in that head collider, and then he's going to charge immediately. Notice that he did not go into the intimidation state again. And so now I can fire at him. He's going to turn around, and he's going to intimidate, and then I'm going to fire, hit him on the collider, and then he's going to start his charging again. And then whenever he's stunned, I'm going to shoot him right on the gaster. Okay, and that should allow me to fire there. Okay, so we have everything set up the way that we want it to. We've got that reaction that we wanted out of all that. Pretty happy with the way this is going so far. Excuse me there. Everything is going really well up to this point. So there's just a couple of minor things that we might want to change. For example, like the walls. They are being destroyed whenever he's hitting those, and what that does is that gets rid of the collider. And so if he happens to go to the wall again and that game object is destroyed, there's nothing there to stop him, and so he can continue running on forever. And so what we might want to do instead is take that script for the collision, and let's go ahead and let's say in that script, boss collision, instead of colliding with the level and destroying it, how about we say other dot renderer, actually it's other dot game object dot renderer is equal to or equals false. Okay, and actually no, not equals false. Yes, we don't want to destroy the game object. We don't even want to destroy the renderer. So what we'll do is we'll just take out destroy altogether, and we'll just say other.gameObject.renderer equals false. So that's going to get rid of the model, but still leaving the collider in place. Now that might create some unexpected results, but that's fine here. And we're getting a warning here, and I forgot enabled. So renderer dot enabled. There we go. Now we should get rid of that warning. And if we hit play, let's go ahead and put him into that charging state really quickly. And for some reason I can't view there. Let me go to maximize. Let's hit play. That's usually a little bit easier. And so if I fire on him, and then he goes into the intimidation state, and I shoot him right in the head, he's going to go ahead and start charging. And then once he hits that game object, okay, he's going to come back. And start firing here. Okay, he's going to go into that intimidation state and then start charging again. So let's go ahead and hit Control-Shift-P really quickly. I want to show you that wall that's over here. So if I select all the prop wall objects, you can see that they are still in place. They're on the ground. That destroyed one is. So that's going to be a little bit of an issue. Another thing is that the game objects, we may not want them to actually be physical. We may just want that to be a boundary. And so what we can do instead is, let's go ahead and unpause that and stop playing. Instead of this being affected by the game object and knocking it over, what we can do is we can set some constraints. So we can freeze its positions and rotations, so that way it stays perfectly still, and it's just a permanent wall. Okay, we can do that. That's totally fine. So I'm going to fire on him again, get him to charge at me. And then once he charges through, he's going to hit that. It's going to destroy that game object anyway. But if we hit Control-Shift-P, you'll see that the colliders are still there. Okay. All right, so now that we have all of that set, we are now ready to move on and start working on the damage controller. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us the opportunity to give the boss a health, and then once we start firing on that Gaster when he's in the stun state, it's going to begin reducing the boss's health. And so let's get started with that next.